Welcome back to The Grind. In this video, we are going to take a look at the full path of this bullet time in Act 7.2 quest number 1. Now, I do have a video summarizing every single path in one quick video with some gameplay if you'd like to take a look at that. But in this video, we're going to go into a little bit more detail and go through each of the different fights and which champions I used for each of them. For this lane with all the nodes that are on it, every time you parry, you're going to give them an evade charge. Once they have those evade charges, it's going to be a 100% chance to evade your next hit. Now, the goal of this, if you're playing along with the nodes, is to parry as many times as you can and then evade a basic attack with dexterity, and it will put a passive stun debuff on the opponent. Sorry, a passive stun, not a debuff, on the opponent for 1.5 seconds for every passive evade charge you built up. Some champions are very good at dealing with this and can burst through the champion with one full stun if you build up enough evade charges. Other champions, you're going to want to stack up a smaller amount so that you can bait out special attacks more frequently. But you're probably going to want at least 4 to 6 charges on there so that you have enough time to do a combo or two and maybe even throw off a special attack. Now, alternatively, you can just play like this is an unstunnable node and just not stun or not parry the opponent. That way there will be no evade charges and you won't have to worry about this. The other thing with this is there is the heavy knockdown ebb and flow. So once you stun the opponent with this node, you're going to want to start by knocking the opponent down with a heavy attack. That's going to remove their protection, give you a fury buff, and allow you to deal more damage. And then you can go into your rotation, like with Nick Fury, he's a fantastic option. You just do like light attack spams and you can burn through the opponents very quickly. Especially because this lane also has bleed vulnerability. So you want to knock the opponent down before you start doing your damage. You also want to apply a bleed. Now, Symbiote Supreme is a bit of an interesting one. It's nice because at the start of the fight, he doesn't really gain power because his power is not based on the regular combat power. So when you attack into him, he's not going to start gaining power rapidly. However, at a certain point, he's going to rapidly start gaining power, and then you're going to have to manage that later. Now, the unfortunate part is that by the time you've built up enough of these evade charges in order to get that stun, he's going to start building power quickly and he'll be stunned, so he won't be able to use it. So you have to be very cautious about that and maybe delay doing the stun until after he uses some power. Alternatively, you can just go all in like I'm doing here because I wasn't quite prepared for this. But because Nick Fury deals so much damage with these nodes, he just continues to burn through it. And then right before the passive stun ends, we throw off a special 2 and we get lucky with the RNG there and land a stun. So we go in with another light combo and a second light combo before it ends and throw off the special 1, but he's already dead, thankfully. So we were able to burn through that with 1 stun. Now the next fight is Yellow Jacket. Yellow Jacket can be a pain in some situations. I brought in Blade because he's a villain, but look, the node is not actually working appropriately because of the danger sense. We're bypassing that and we're actually stunning him. Now, this allows for a lot of uncertainty, which is not ideal for this node, so I did end up making lots of mistakes. I would say if you're bringing Blade, then you're probably going to want to just play around like not using the node, just knock him down and pretend he's not stunnable. Go in, do your bleed damage, throw off your special attacks. We're getting that fury, and then just try to avoid stunning if you're going to do this lane with Blade. There are a couple villains on this path. Loki is one of them, and then you can use him for the boss fights as well because they're all actually villains. So that is something, if you are limited on options, Blade can potentially be used, but again, because of the interaction with this node, he's not ideal because you can end up making mistakes like you just saw. However, with all his bleed and good special attack damage, he can be used. Again, it's just a little bit more tricky. So we're going to skip through the rest of this fight a little bit so we don't waste more time than we need to going through these nodes. But the next fight is going to be Thor Ragnarok. Now, the trouble with this one is similar to the one with Symbiote Supreme because he can gain power. Now, the way around that is to just put him in a perpetual stun lock, but that is a little bit risky because most champions will not be able to burn through the entire health pool in the right amount of time. So for Thor, it's really going to be doing more brief stuns, shorter ones, or using power control. So if you're just doing shorter stuns, you can push him up to where he's going to gain power, but before he does, bait out a special attack and then work to manage the power by baiting specials, making sure he's not stunned during that time so he doesn't get a special 3. Alternatively, you can use power control, so you can just kind of ignore the fact that he's going to gain power, put him into a long stun if possible, possible. And then right before the stun ends, use your power control option. So with Warlock, he's a great option because you can just spam heavies, get some great bleed, and then if necessary, when the time is right, you can save your special 3 so that you can throw that off and avoid him gaining power. We actually stunned him there because of the infections is decreasing the ability accuracy of the node. So that is also something to consider with Warlock, is when you do have the infection active, you will have some bit of unreliability with the node because the parries will sometimes go through. So you have to make sure that you're prepared for that and don't go a little too crazy with expecting a stun and then getting hit. So, but here we have the full 3 bars of power still. We're building up as many parries as we can. And then when we activate it, we're just going to go all out again. We knock him down right away to get that ebb and flow protection off. We go all out, dealing as much damage as possible, chaining on heavies to get those enhanced bleeds. And then right before the stun ends, we're going to activate our special 3 so that we drain power from him, even though we almost had him down. But this is kind of the fail safe. So at the end of the passive stun, we know he's full power, but if we throw off our power drain right at the end there, we are able to manage the situation a little bit more easily without having to worry about the power gained during the stun duration. So there's a few reasons why Warlock is a fantastic option for this lane as well. Now, some more fun with Nick Fury against this Wasp. We build up a bunch of these evade charges, chaining on as many as we can with reparries. So that's a fantastic skill to learn and practice prior to this path. And then when we activate the stun, we first want to knock him down. We have bleeds active, so we have that bleed vulnerability going. We dash in the first time, and then after that, we just continue doing light attacks as our first and final hit so that we have quick rotations through our 4-hit combo to get as many bleeds off as possible. And before the stun ends, we have finished off the fight. The final champion on this path is Loki, who is also a villain, so if you do bring in Blade with the Ghost Rider synergy, you can use him here as well. But again, because of the unreliability, I wasn't really a fan of that. So we're coming in with Apocalypse this time, who has bleed on his heavy attacks, which means when you do your heavy attack to knock him down for the ebb and flow, you're also getting the bleed vulnerability, and you can just go in throwing off your special attacks. You can just chain heavies in the corner to stack up increased bleeds as well. But because of the decreased damage with this champion, you do have to pause at certain points to bait out special attacks. So that is something to consider, especially because Apocalypse doesn't have any sort of power control. So ultimately for this path, you can use any champions. Ideally, you want a champion that can inflict a bleed, and then ideally you also want a champion that deals a high amount of damage, especially with their special attacks. And then having a source of power control can be extremely useful for this, so you do not have to stop doing damage during the stun in order to bait out a heavy or a special attack. You can just continue dealing damage and then use your power control right at the very end to drain power, or use it in the middle to prevent them from getting 3 bars of power. So lots of options for this fight with some clear advantages to certain utility, but again, you can do this lane with pretty much any champion. So I really hope these guides have been useful and helpful to people. Let me know in the comments if you have other recommendations or things that I should adjust or do differently to make them more useful. But I'm doing my best to give all the information that's necessary to help while keeping it as short and clear and concise as possible to save your valuable time. So thank you so much for watching. Good luck, and I hope to see you in the next video.